Young people are somewhat impatient and in a hurry. It takes time. Most very good companies are built with a certain sense of gradualism. I think it's important that Indian founders are rooted in the Indian context. You cannot have your head in Silicon Valley. Seek first to understand and only then to be understood. I'm actually quite a nice guy. Hi, I'm Sanjiv Bikhchandani. I'm the co-founder of 𝐁𝐻𝐻 and Ashoka University. I'm 60 years old and I've been an entrepreneur for 35 years.
What's one leadership practice you think is most underutilized or underrated by leaders today?
Most very good companies are built with a certain sense of gradualism. It takes 10 years, 15 years. And to be a good leader, you have to be willing and able to stay the course, be persistent. I don't know if it's the most underrated, but I think very many young people are somewhat impatient and in a hurry. It takes time. So you got to give it time and you got to keep at it.
Sanjiv, as someone who's watched the tech startup ecosystem evolve over the last 2 decades, how have founders and leadership changed? Which are the changes that have been for the better and what for the worst?
When I became an entrepreneur in 1990, to now that's 35 years, first of all, there is a market. When I launched Naukri, there were only 14,000 internet accounts in the country. There was no market. Now there are a few 100 million people using the internet. Second, there was no question of raising venture capital. There was no risk capital available. Now there is risk capital available. Third, for an educated person, highly qualified person, entrepreneurship was not a mainstream career choice. Right? It was something a few oddballs did. Today, it is accepted as a mainstream career choice. It is aspirational. So many more people are trying. Because many more people are trying, and it is now mainstream to work in a startup, you are able to attract talent. So the talent is available. Those are all the good parts. The challenge is that there's more competition. If there's more money available for you, there's also more money available for competition. So it's not as if success is easier today, and it's not as if it's harder. It's just that challenges are different. But there were challenges then, there are challenges now, so challenges don't go away. What worries me is I think there needs to be greater appreciation of the importance of being honest, better governance. Now, for the most part, Indian founders are honest, maybe 90-95%. But the 3-5% who are not are the worrisome ones.
Do you think Indian founders need to learn something from their Western counterparts?
I think it's important that Indian founders are rooted in the Indian context simply because that is where their customers are for the most part. And that is where the operations are, and that is where the employees come from. So you can't be out of touch with the local context. You cannot have your head in Silicon Valley. You may observe what's happening globally, to perhaps transplant some of the best practices, to perhaps see global trends in technology. But finally, if you are operating in India and you're selling in India, you've got to be rooted in the local context.
Sanjiv, what are Indian founders exporting to the world on Indian leadership?
Well, there are a whole bunch of Indian talent that's overseas, that's doing very well in the Silicon Valley and other places. Quality of the Indian higher education system, at the top end, at the apex of the pyramid, is really something, especially in terms of quality of talent. So Indians try really hard. The best Indians are really smart. Not all Indians, but best Indians are really smart, and therefore they teach the world a number of things. I mean, you can see that by the number of senior executives and founders in Silicon Valley.
Sanjiv, what's the most common piece of career advice you completely disagree with?
Take the safer path. The truth is the safer path may not be the safer path in the long run. See, if you want to achieve great things, you've got to think slightly differently. That does not mean reject the safer path. All I'm saying is assess all options, and what may seem to be an unsafe path may not be an unsafe path.
Sanjiv, you're considered to be an eternal optimist and an acute angel investor. What are you most cautious about when it comes to people?
In my view, a good entrepreneur sees opportunity. A great entrepreneur, somebody who can be successful for 30, 40, 50 years, is a very good judge of risk. How good a judge of risk you were in good times can only be known in the bad times. So we create store in assessing risk all the time, during good times and bad times. And to my mind, not everybody is a good judge of risk, because you've got to be optimistic, because you can't survive as an entrepreneur if you're pessimistic. But at the same time, you've got to understand that what is it that could go wrong, might go wrong, what is the risk here. So there's optimism, there's also a certain reality check.
Sanjiv, many leaders and founders look for connection with people in an interview. How do you square that up with not creating mini-me versions of themselves in an organization?
So very often people make that mistake, right? I think you've got to ask the right question in the right manner to probe how this person is different yet very good. I think that's really important because a person who thinks like you will not challenge you. And if somebody doesn't challenge you, then I think you'll miss out a few risks that you otherwise would have caught and you'll make a mistake. In our company, we are a very argumentative company, InfoEdge. The culture is such that people speak their minds. So one guarantee we give our fresh joinees is that you'll never get sacked because they disagree with your boss. That's kind of addictive because if somebody spends 2 years here, he or she doesn't leave. The biggest empowerment is you're empowered to speak. If you're empowered to speak and you can express your mind, I think employees get very happy.
What's one very common myth or misconception about leaders that you would like to clarify?
The great leaders are these charismatic, very tall, iconic figures. Some are. Many get the job done, right, without making a big fuss.
Sanjiv, 3 words that describe your leadership style.
One of my profs at business school said something in a class which stayed with me. Seek first to understand and only then to be understood. To figure out the other person's point of view, what he's thinking, what he's feeling, what his motivations are, what his challenges are, what his circumstances are. Only then go out there and say, okay, this is what I want you to do. That's the way, if you're taking into account his or her concerns, limitations, circumstances, will you get them to do what you would like them to do? So listen a lot, observe a lot. That's one. The same prof, also in another class, said, he talked about this concept of locus of control, which is basically great leaders have an internal locus of control, others have an external locus of control. The locus of control means when something goes wrong, what do you say to yourself? The solution lies within me and it was my fault. Or do you find external causes of failure? If you find external causes of failure all the time, and that's your tendency, you're not going to lead well and solve the problem. If you say the solution lies within me and it's my fault, or maybe I should have done it differently, that's when you'll be a better leader. The third is you've got to be respectful, polite, humble, disarming person when you're dealing with people. If you're not that, then sooner or later people will lose respect for you and not follow you. So the fundamental thing about leadership is that a leader has to have followers. If the leader does not have followers, he's not a leader.
3 things that Sanjiv Bikhchandani does while giving feedback to his CXOs.
So I've not been a CEO for a long time. I stepped aside in 2010. This may be a weak spot for me. I may not have been great at giving feedback, but I try and tell the truth.
Sanjiv, what's the one thing you discovered pretty late about leading people?
Don't avoid confrontation if required. But you don't have to be rude to confront, right? You have to put the issue on the table to confront.
What's the most brutal feedback you received, Sanjiv, on your leadership? Who did it come from and what did they tell you?
So I've been through, in my last 35 years of entrepreneur, 3 partnership breakups. Okay, one in 1992-93, one in, I think, 2001, one in 2002. And they were hard. And they were usually, in hindsight, probably a result of poor communication. Some were my fault, some were the other person's fault. I think if you are honest about communication and upfront, you can avoid some of this stuff.
Sanjiv, if you could ask somebody one question in an interview and based on that one question you would hire them, what would you probe them on?
What is the one time or 2 times that you were dishonest about something and how did you deal with it? What do you think about it now?
Sanjiv, did you ever go through a period where you thought entrepreneurship isn't for me? How did you overcome self-doubt?
See, one is a big picture self-doubt. I'm in the wrong career, wrong profession. I should not be an entrepreneur. I never had that. I was clear and convinced that I want to be an entrepreneur, and at no point did I want to go back to a job. There were times when I was financially hard up. I wasn't taking a salary. I think the first 10 years, for roughly 6 or 7 years, I didn't take a salary. So I used to teach at business schools on weekends to get some pocket money as business faculty. But I never had a doubt about, that I'm on the wrong track. Sure, there'll be self-doubt about specific actions that, hey, should we launch this product? Is it the right communication? But that is stuff which, learning by doing, you try it out, it works. Sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes you manage, you figure it out.
3 must-haves on Sanjiv Bikhchandani's list when he looks to hire people.
I think commitment, integrity, people skills. And if it's a technical job, then technical skills.
Sanjiv, when you switched from entrepreneur to investor, what were some of the leadership traits you had to unlearn in this journey?
Prior to 2010, I was the CEO of the company. So when I said something, people listened and it got done. Now, when you're dealing with entrepreneurs, see, nobody becomes an entrepreneur because he's looking for a new boss. So you say 10 things to the founder, and he'll nod his head and say yes because he's being polite to you because you're 10 years or 20 years older than him and because you put in the money. But it doesn't mean he'll do that. So it took me 2 years to learn that I have to suggest and influence and not tell and direct. And that's the single biggest mind shift for me. As the portfolio grew larger with more companies, I had enough on my plate that I didn't get too much into any one single company and therefore get in the founder's way. I have never ever had to or wanted to go and sit in the founder's office and say, let's run the company together. That's a bad idea. You'll get in the founder's way, and that's not why he took your money.
In your formative years, who influenced your earlier thought process on leadership and people? And what is that one lesson, Sanjiv, that stayed with you throughout?
Most people, including me, are not influenced by one person. You are influenced by many people. You're influenced by circumstances, the environment, the surroundings, the family you're born in, some DNA, some, whatever. My father was a doctor in the government. My mother was a homemaker. We grew up in government colonies. All my friends are similar background. I went to a school, St. Columba's in Delhi, where the work ethic, the discipline, the rigor, that school was about character building, discipline, and academics. All boys school. You got caned if you didn't do your homework. You got caned if you stepped out of line. I think my school played a big part. Okay, parents played a big part. The family I grew up in played a big part. My brother, my sister, elder to me. My friends and their parents. And the shared circumstances that we had. So I think the knowledge that you had to work hard, the awareness of that. So your parents would tell us that, listen, you have no money to inherit. If you want to get somewhere in life, study hard. All we can do is put you in a decent school, and you are fortunately got at this admission. Just make the most of it. Study hard, because then doors will open. Okay, so this old-fashioned work ethic of putting your best effort, that is something, is the foundation of a lot of the things that I did later on in life. Okay, whether it's getting into St. Stephen's College because I got the marks, whether it is getting into 𝐈𝐧𝐝𝐢𝐚 because I cleared the exam. So I think a good upbringing and a very good education laid a good foundation.
Sanjiv, what are you teaching your children today about leadership and people?
I think the first thing is about hard work and commitment. It's really important. And that's the way they've been brought up. One other thing I want to talk about is my first job. So my first job was straight out of college in an advertising agency called Lintas. 1 year in Delhi, 2 years in Bombay. I think for me that was the best possible nursery and cradle for learning at the beginning of my work life and how to work in an organization. As a junior executive, a trainee, I still achieve results. I learned to be personally organized. I learned attention to detail. I learned a service attitude. I learned people skills. I learned better communication skills. I learned strategic thinking, clarity of thought. I had so many great people who I worked with, from whom I learned so much. I think that I was very fortunate to do 3 years in Lintas early on in my career.
Who in Business India is inspiring Sanjiv Bikhchandani today, and why?
See, no one person, like I said, no one organization. But I tell you, early on, I remember when I was 12 or 13 years old, I think Mr. J.R.D. Tata featured in some magazine cover. And I remember being inspired. I remember in 1975, my brother, sister and I had gone on a vacation to Ahmedabad. My uncle said, let's go for a drive. So we got in the car, went for a drive. And he drove us to this place where there was this red brick buildings with round holes. And I said, what is this? He said, oh, this is the Indian Institute of Management. Okay, I said, really? What is management? And what do you learn here? What is this institute? And he told me. And then somewhere it clicked that, okay, fine, maybe sometime I should try and come and study here. I was 11 years old. After it got into my head that, what the J.R.D. Tata, I said, maybe some point in time I should get into business. I didn't use the word entrepreneurship. That time it was business 𝐿𝐴𝐴. There are kids who will do what their parents do, and there are kids who will do anything but that. I was the latter kind. So I had decided I will not join the government and not be a doctor. I want to do my own thing. And that was then early on. So I remember articulating for the first time when I was in class 11. A friend and I were sitting next to each other in class, and you were one of the brightest guys in class. I was bright, but in my life I've never come first in class. Never, ever. Right? But I've done well enough to sort of achieve my goals.
What are a couple of mistakes from your own career that you're telling your kids to avoid at all costs?
So, well, one mistake actually, I did it 3 times. Right? I think it's a good idea to communicate with your colleagues, partners, co-founders. Communicate very well so you don't have a fallout.
Sanjiv, if you were in my seat and could put somebody there to interview, who would it be and what would you want to ask them?
What would you like to be in your next life?
What's the end goal for Sanjiv after all this success? What inspires you to still be at work every day?
I think the key is to strengthen the institutions that you founded, co-founded, helped build, or those institutions who have helped you. So my school has helped me, so I work there. College has helped me, I work there. 𝐈𝐴𝐚 Ahmedabad has helped me, I work there. The company 𝐸𝐴𝐚 has helped me, I work there. Ashoka, we've co-founded, I work there. And I try and work with other institutions.
What are you most proud about 𝐸𝐴𝐚 or Naukri.com?
I think every time somebody tells you that I found my job through Naukri, it's a big thing.
Sanjeev, your quickfire with Qunba starts now. A leader must always dash.
Be truthful.
A leader should never dash.
Deceive somebody.
One thing you wish people knew more about Sanjeev.
I'm actually quite a nice guy.
One thing you wish people knew more about Naukri.com.
It's one of the most innovative tech companies in India.
20 years from today, Naukri.com will be
Still number one.
a leader who's captivated your imagination.
Mahatma Gandhi.
The most aha moment of your career.
The day we made our first sale in Naukri.
3 most used apps on your phone.
Zomato. WhatsApp.
One thing to keep in mind while managing millennial workforce.
You're a dinosaur. Delegate and listen and let others do it.
One thing never to do while managing a millennial workforce.
Raise your voice.
70-hour work week dash.
Good idea.
When in doubt, Sanjiv Bikhchandani.
Goes on to something else and then comes back later.
An entrepreneur or investor, what's more fun?
Doing it yourself. Being an entrepreneur.
If you were down to your last crore in a bank, what would you bet on?
Gold.
If LinkedIn were up for sale, would you buy it?
Depends on the price.
One founder you'd love to be co-founder with today.
I think all of them.
Besides his family, Sanjeev's most prized possession is
My imagination.
one thing that's been on your to-do list or your personal to-do list for the longest time.
To sleep 8 hours.
A business buzzword that you dislike hearing in meetings.
Many. Mentor, unicorn, whole bunch of others.
One thing Sanjeev never wants to hear in an investing pitch.
We will disrupt the market.
Your favorite binge watch till date.
John Le Carre, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. Not the movie recently, but the TV show of 1980s with Sir Alec Guinness. And then the sequel to that, Smiley's People, again Sir Alec Guinness. That's a total 10 hours. I must have watched them 5 or 6 times.
A book that you keep going back to read.
Again, John Le Carre, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
One startup platform that you really admire.
Zomato.
Dipender Goyal in 2 words.
Very sensible guy.
A business leader or educator that you wish you had as your teacher.
Warren Buffett.
A moment from your life you'd love to relive.
My 3rd year exam since college.
A tech breakthrough you'd love to see in your lifetime.
Time travelers.
One thing you're most grateful for in your life.
Everything that God has given me.
And finally, Sanjeev, if you had a gigantic billboard out there, what would the message to millions be and why?
Let it be.
With that, Sanjeev, thank you very, very much.
Qunba Leadership Series is a very, very interesting project. It is putting together a montage, perhaps glimpses, a collage of thoughts about leadership of very many people who've walked the talk.